Right. It's recording now. Yeah, I've used this lots of times. So.
We got to do the soundtrack. Yeah. Hey man,
Welcome,
long
welcome
time.
back by
Thank you.
no popular demand. Philosophical tangents. It's been too long. How many years now?
Way too long.
Way too long. And what's
I
the
mean,
topic of
what
today?
what is a year even?
What? Yeah. What? Yeah. Exactly. Like to God.
What
That
is time?
like. Yeah. What is time? Is it relevant? Is it important?
We
Is it
are
relative?
but grains of sand on the beach of life.
Exactly. We are. We are. But tears in rain, as Blade Runner would say. So, or Roy Batty even. Um. Yeah. So what's the topic of today for a philosophical chinwag?
Well,
Cell.
today, Sam, I think we were going to do culture war.
I mean, it's very topical. It's very
Yeah,
topical, and it's on the tip of everyone's fingers on Facebook.
yeah.
So what? Why not? Why not? So I don't know where to begin. Capitol Hill.
Oof. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. But obviously, as like esteemed philosophers as we are,
Mm.
we obviously we're going to be topical, but we're also going to talk about like root causes of um, this kind of culture war and things like that.
So
Deep stuff.
what was the root cause of Capitol Hill? Where did
Bloody
that all
hell.
come from? What are the causes there? Like why were they so angry? Why did that angry mob go to
Well,
Capitol Hill?
I mean, obviously, it's all the left's fault, isn't it? Because obviously, everything's the left's fault in the whole world. So obviously, it's my fault, it's your fault, it's our fault. We're responsible for everything in the world, you see. So
What I find interesting about that is like especially in Britain, because we are British.
yeah,
Sorry for that. Just getting a bit of peace and quiet. We are British. The Conservative Party have been in for power for 10 years now,
yeah,
and yeah, everything's still a culturally Marxist conspiracy theory.
yeah,
Everything is the fault of the left. Oh, it's culturally Marxist. It's like, well, hang on a minute. You've got an extremely right wing government, like with Dominic Cummings, who was at the heart of it and pulling all the strings until recently. And they've privatized everything, privatized the NHS, they've academized schools. Everything has been privatized in essence, and yet the blame culture, the finger, the pointy finger of the white working class right has been on cultural Marxism. Oh, there's a cultural Marxist conspiracy to destroy the West,
yeah.
and for me, that doesn't add up. But where does that believability come from there? Why do they believe this?
I think partly like one of the way that the right works, like in terms of this kind of malicious right wing that we see now, not necessarily like conservatives, old style people, but kind of them as well. But the main way they work is by accusation. They're always
Mm.
attacking. They're always and they're always feeling attacked as well. They're like, oh, there's a war on Christmas. There's a war on Britishness. There's a war on shepherd's pie. Whatever. They'll just say there's a war on X. So they're always like this. They're always put upon. They're always besieged. They've got this anxiety-inducing mentality. Oh no, they're going to
Mm.
take away everything. All people of your kind are gonna be a minority in your own country. All this fear mongering, and it puts people
But wait a minute.
on the
What's
back
wrong with
foot.
being a minority? That means there's obviously something bad about being a minority, which they're acknowledging. And perhaps there isn't. Maybe it isn't all milk and honey. If you are in a minority, perhaps being a minority is actually quite a struggle. So why are they so scared of becoming a minority? Because it's Schrodinger's minority, isn't it? At the same time, they're like, oh, minorities get everything. They go to the front of the dole queue and get their benefits first. Like that. So, like on the one hand, like being a minority like gets you all these freebies. On the other hand, there's this ultimate fear about becoming a minority. So there seems to be like a tacit admission amongst the riot that there is something that isn't quite as fun in your everyday existence about being a minority. Like I see it again and again. Like one of the best manifestations of this political philosophy is in road rage. Yeah, it's the road rage of the white working class man. Like they just get so angry, and I saw this like white working class man just abusing an Asian woman, and just like absolutely abusing her. And I just said, "Shut up!" Yeah, and he looked at me. I'm quite a well-developed white working class man origins. Anyway, myself, and he just shut up. He just shut up straight away. Straight away, no questions asked. Oh, I'll acknowledge your privilege, your muscular privilege. Like, and I just thought that's pathetic. That's pathetic, and that just show you that punching up and punching down and balance. I'd say. But I want to go back to this Capitol Hill thing and like where it comes, because we were talking about conspiracy theories the other day, weren't we? Right. So
Capitol Hill is a logical conclusion of if you believe that the election was stolen, then that they believe that they're defending democracy and that democracy is under attack, that Biden's done a coup. So they're, in their eyes, they're heroes of democracy. Obviously, I think there's a lot of malicious people who know it, but I'm talking about the average foot soldier of MAGA hat wearing, that they're part of the revolution. This kind of vulgar revolution. So like, I've been debating some Christian priest, Trumpite, hardcore, who lives in the southern, I think he's in the southern states somewhere, and he was attacking me the whole time and saying it's a coup and we're standing for democracy. And then when I asked him for evidence, no, there's no evidence. But he's linking to Newsmax and all these awful non-medias. So it's like we keep repeating a lie enough, and then people will believe it, man. It's literally that. I think
the key issue with conspiracy theories, which Christopher Hitchens said, was that any theory which lends itself to not being disproven is to that extent a weak one. So the things about conspiracy theories is that if you meet a conspiracy theorist who's extreme ideological in his or her conspiracy theory mantra, then they can't be disproven. They just can't be disproven. But at the same time, and this is where I think you and I diverge a bit, as a historian, I've seen time and time again conspiracies occurring throughout history. Of if you go back to Elizabethan times, there were many plots against Elizabeth I. If you go back to pre-World War II, and Adolf Hitler used the Gleiwitz incident, which was where he attacked a lot of Polish soldiers, put their uniforms on German soldiers, then killed some German soldiers, and it made it look like that Poland had attacked Germany, and then therefore Germany had a pretext for war. So I think the problem is that in history that there are so many conspiracy theories, and then that lends legitimacy to conspiracy theories happen today. So I think this is and you got to question where the paranoia is coming from. Where is the paranoia coming from?
Well, Sam, just to touch. I mean, also you also had that Guy Fawkes, whose conspiracy was to make fireworks in the sky so he could sell crappy fireworks to people for hundreds of years. But no, the thing is, Sam, I 100% agree with you. There have been conspiracies throughout time, and right now there's all sorts of things going behind the thing. But I guess it's like the magnitude of the conspiracy theories. Like going back to this Christopher Hitchens quote you mentioned. I mean, now that you've got the Great Reset conspiracy theory, and you've got the Bilderbergs and the New World Order, all this stuff. These are like massive and far-reaching conspiracy theories that can't be proven at all. They're complete and utter shit.
Well, you think Bilderberg is completely that's it? There's no truth.
Well, I mean, the thing is we all know about it. It's it's not like if it's a conspiracy, they're not doing very good, are they, at hiding it? I'd be a bit more suspicious of something that wasn't so blatantly public. So I mean, I don't know. I think I understand the world as being in the grip of capitalism. Basically, that's the enemy, as it were. That's the thing we need to evolve away from, not the New World Order. So those conspiracies you mentioned are all quite small and quite plausible, and there's empirical evidence. But the bigger it is, the less likely. Capitol Hill, they believe it was a conspiracy theory, the election. The scale of fraud would have to have been immense. The US system is, it's bourgeois democracy, but the fact is, it is solid, it's decentralized. Every check and balance proved they were wrong. I think Trump lost 63 out of 64 court cases. They got destroyed. Recounts, they got destroyed. There was no evidence. So it's at what point do you let go of it and accept reality?
I think what's quite hard is when again I'm looking at this as a historian as well as an attempted philosopher. When I look at America now, it's so divided. and that divide screams of what I saw in like what I've studied. In like I've studied it again and again and again at various different levels of education, like what happened in Weimar and Nazi Germany, with that just
Mm,
extreme polarized divide between left and right. Okay, and so it's been espoused on a few different podcasts throughout the world, but like this coming civil war
mm,
in America. But political violence is normal in America now. It's not odd. And in the 1990s, we didn't see that. Like politics was extremely mediocre. It was quite boring, really. Voter turnout in America went down. But what we're starting to see in the West is this culture war between left and right, and
mm.
it's so polarized right now out in America. I do find that pretty scary. I do find it pretty scary because I think that if it came down to a civil war in the USA between left and right, I really genuinely believe the right would win because they're more organized. They've got the militias, they've got more guns. I just think like they'll just wipe out the left. Really would. It'd just be like a bloodbath. I don't know if that's if is this imagining things too far, because like say if this happens in a year or two, then I'd be like, oh well, I called that. But is it too far to think there could, we got immense political violence. Just look at the YouTube videos of like
Mm,
huge violent clashes on the street. I'm not talking about one or two people punching each other. I'm talking
mm,
about
mm.
like Lord of the Rings style, like 300 people here, 300 people, bah! And they're clashing in the middle,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
purely ideological political violence, and the divide is
yeah.
just as bad and hateful on both sides. You know?
Well, I'm not sure about that statement, the last statement,
Yeah.
dude. But well, because like I mean, look, like Charlottesville was an extreme example of the right coming together. Those basically Nazis marching with burning torches,
Mm,
shouting anti-Semitic slogans publicly.
mm,
That I don't think there's anything to that scale. Or Capitol Hill was these right wingers, mainly white,
mm,
mainly privileged,
mm,
that greatly underestimated them. They could have done some damage. I mean, it ended because a state officer shot someone.
mm.
That was kind of the turning point. That's why that's the bottom line. That's the
Cool.
bottom line is
Five
is
people
in a
did
power
die.
state.
Five people
Yeah,
did die. Five people
yeah.
lost their lives that night, including the people that were going to try and start a. I don't know if it was a revolution or a coup. I don't know what we could call that. I don't know like quite.
After I saw pictures of the guy with like handcuffs, those wire handcuffs, I
Yeah.
thought these people were probably going to take. They could have taken Congress people hostage. It could have been much nastier. Even though it was, I'm not underestimating how bad it was, but it could have
Mm.
been much worse.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean
yeah.
that
It could have been.
among them there were people. I think the average Trump MAGA hat
Mm.
was probably just going along with it, but fundamentally there were people in there who would have planned shit, man. They would have planned it, and yeah, it was assault on democracy, on bourgeois democracy, yeah, but still, it's assault on democracy.
Mm.
And it came from the
Yeah,
right.
yeah. I
And
know. I
I've
know.
heard,
Yeah.
I've heard people. Sorry, Sam. Sorry to cut.
Mm.
I've heard people compare. The Chaz, the Capitol Hill autonomous zones, where the
Yeah.
left wing.
Mm.
I've heard people compare that and Black Lives Matter protests to Capitol Hill, which is
Mm.
just complete and absolute nonsense. Like there is no comparison to some lefties taking over, a place with very specific demands, like defund the police, fund the community stuff. That was their demands. Comparing that to a violent mob getting into the seat. Imagine people getting into parliament. Can you imagine
Mm.
like hardcore like right wingers getting into parliament? That's and five people dying. That's unprecedented. In our
Right.
lifetime, that's the biggest threat on democracy. So there is no comparison between left and right violence. Obviously, they're both. There is violence on both sides, but the right is far more concerning to me than.
Well, yeah. I mean, if the Black Lives Matter and Antifa or whatever they however we pronounce or intonate those syllables, if they had gone to Capitol Hill, I think that the police would have been a lot more willing to pull the trigger as well.
The
Um,
National Guard, mate, would have done it.
yeah, yeah, but it's the in-group, out-group psychology, isn't it? Because a
Mm,
lot of police are just naturally conservative, aren't they? And so they don't want to pull the trigger. Like in 1920s, 30s, Germany, there were a lot of political assassinations, and all the political assassinations conducted by right-wing extremists weren't penalised by the system, and all the assassinations committed by communists, they were all
yeah.
penalised by the death penalty. Yeah, so
Wow.
it's this thing about the state being very complicit
Yeah.
with the right. But like it's things like QAnon, it's things like Pizzagate, which makes these people feel so
Mm.
alienated. But why do they feel so alienated? Like because they really detest like socialism, communism, Bernie Sanders, Jeremy Corbyn.
Mm.
Where does this hatred, where does this vitriol come from? Do you think?
I mean, partly they're necessarily going to feel like that. Their whole mindset of like living for some imagined past, make
Mm,
America great again. Well, was it ever particularly great? In some ways, it wasn't. Like that's always going to breed some kind of dissatisfaction. But Sam, I think honestly, the simple answer and the simplified answer is
mm,
basically capitalism,
mm,
like a system of winners and losers, a system which creates alienation and atomization and nihilism. Consumerist nihilism,
mm,
and it's a very hierarchical system. Like, how many people have real say over their work? Most people hate their work. They don't
mm,
get to make any decisions. They're underpaid, so on. So all these problems, and then along comes just someone to scapegoat immigrants or scapegoat Muslims, or they scapegoat someone, and then the people just the MAGA hats. Those kind of people are just swept away by this atavistic hatred of the other to create their own identity.
I think a lot of it. So again, using my history head, it's social conditions. Like you look at what happened in 1920s Germany. You had the 1923. You had like huge hyperinflation.
Mm,
You had like this loss of stability because of like there's a power vacuum when the Kaiser left, and then in
mm,
1929 you've got the Wall Street crash, and then out of that, of those social conditions, you've got something ripe for something to happen. So looking at the social conditions in America, they're just not comparable because everyone's got food.
mm,
It's still one of the richest countries in the world. But I think what we've got a problem with is the actual dissemination of wealth. Okay, so
mm,
where you're looking, where are people unhappy? Well, they're unhappy in the kind of Midwest and the Deep South. Well, why is that? Well, actually, global capitalism has now decided that America isn't going to be the top power anymore. Like China's rising, India's rising, Brazil's rising. So what you're getting is a leveling out of social conditions. And so maybe their cost of petrol is going up, maybe the cost of food is going up, maybe their wages are stagnating, and
mm,
out of that kind of like anger, that economic anger, they're looking for this extreme solution. Well, things used to be better for us back then. So, obviously, what it's knee jerk right wing reactions. It's not like, actually, like I'm a victim of my social class because I'm a blue collar worker, and I
mm.
haven't really got any union rights because the unions have just been completely destroyed in America and Britain. So they don't see things within that prism because they kind of lack the education and vocabulary to to kind of do so. So they just become the lumpen proletariat, haven't they?
I think, and you can also with like the southern states, you can also drizzle on a load of racism. You know,
Oh
like
yeah,
that
immense racism, immense
they're no
racism.
longer they see black folks doing well. Their kind of in group ego is like, oh no, look at these people, and they're still bitter about that, which is pretty messed up. And yeah, and white supremacy definitely plays a part in it. Like
I
and
mean,
the end of the ultimate end of American power. Obviously it's still a powerful nation, but yeah, as you were saying, touching on, other nations are rising, and when empires start to fall, or like powerful nations start to fall, it gets quite scary. Like nasty stuff can happen.
we've seen it with the British Empire just falling in the after Suez Crisis, 1956, and then the next
Mm,
20 years after that, and then you get this rise of like, so I live in Bexley and in Welling, which is just a couple of miles down the road. We used to have like National Front headquarters. Yeah, so I can see like a
wow,
causal
man.
relation. So what you can see
Yeah.
is like a causal relationship between kind of like international decline and
Mm,
then an upsurge in kind of reactionary, like more fascist politics. But this is something I
yeah.
wanted to talk about actually. Like,
Mm,
and so I've obviously you come from a left wing position, so do I. I think we see things slightly differently. In like you you don't see any. I think you don't think the hatred on both sides is commensurate,
mm,
for each other. And I just see like there's an extreme intolerance sometimes amongst people on the left. And like if we look at the Labour election results in 2019, and they were just terrible. And it's
mm,
because I think like everyone just got into echo chambers. Like if you don't like the NHS, then delete me. If you have like any faults which don't conform to mine, delete me. And I'm starting to see this on both sides. So people don't talk to each other anymore apart from to be like boo politics, and just creating echo chambers. So like a lot of like people on the left in England was so genuinely surprised, like genuinely surprised when Jeremy Corbyn didn't win, because they've just created it's like we've got this echo chamber narrative, and it's just like this is the in-group out-group psychology, which I think tribalism. So Sean Nash, he always goes on about tribalism between left and right, and that's why he's a liberal in the middle, because there's just like so much hatred between the two. But I don't think you see things the same. And I think just one last thing I'm going to qualify with before you respond. On the right, I think we just see a lot more hostility and racism, which is, I think, the moral argument for being on the left. But anyway, please.
So I think like Sean's ambitions are quite noble. Like try and, or even in yours as well, like be a bit more dialogue-y, be more open to dialogue, and not being echo chambers. That's good call. But I think that there's well, first of all, tolerance. Like, let's question tolerance and should we tolerate, like in this country we don't tolerate Nazi flags, we don't tolerate Hitler salutes, and that's great. We don't tolerate Holocaust deniers.
No.
These people are dangerous. Like we acknowledge that. We say no, we're not having it. That's hate speech. So we don't allow that, which is fantastic. I think so, but now like the way the right and especially fascists and tend to work is with coding and dog whistling. So it's like, they'll talk about when they're being anti-Semitic, they won't openly be anti-Semitic. They'll talk about global elites and globalism, and they'll take facts and put them into this if they use any facts at all, and they'll put them into this narrative to try and lead people into down their nasty little road. I do think they're much less empirical. I think if you're basically working class and you're working against your own interests, you have to be pretty unempirical. Like, right wingers tend to dislike immigrants, despite the fact that immigrants boost the economy, pay into the economy, and effectively raise everyone's standard of living in terms economically, definitely. And it's like, and yet they hate immigrants, even though it's against their own interests as well. So I think they are lacking an empiricism because of their self-negating, almost self-hatred, of their own class interests, and then that manifests. They never target the actual cause, the capitalists who are doing really well or the system that's crushing them. They take it out on who they perceive as weaker. They take it out on scapegoats, and it's like a never-ending hatred because they're never dealing with the problem. Whereas us on the left, we're like, we identify capitalism, we identify the problem, but we identify actual solutions, and we try and use, but when it comes to like climate science, climate is so on the left. Like it's such a non-starter. We are pushing action to stop climate change, like Extinction Rebellion, which claims to be like neither left or right. It's non-partisan. The reality is it's mostly left-wing. Surprise, surprise. A lot of at the moment, the COVID conspiracy people, a lot of them are right-wingers, and they're they've got their for-profit fake news, and they've got their for-profit blogs and all this stuff, and they're profiting from it. Literally, the David Ickes of the world are making dollar, man. Piers Corbyn.
Yeah.
I think these people are making money.
I see, when I first kind of got into like alternative politics, shall I say, it was like 10 years ago. And I just thought that like conspiracy theorists were more left inclined. Yeah, they were more left inclined. And they're more sympathetic towards like the proletariat and how they've been kind of, and the middle classes, how they've been victimized by kind of interest. Like, huge amount of, like, we live in an interest society. You're just paying these loans back with huge amounts of interest on all the time, and kind of look like analysing that banking system, the Federal Reserve, and things like that. And then I kind of felt that conspiracy theorists were on the left, but definitely within the last 10 years, it's really transitioned onto the right. And I think, like a lot of people are. I mean, this is the problem with conspiracy thinking. Like, it isn't empirical; it's abstract. It's like, well, because if my government isn't telling me the truth and this newspaper isn't telling me the truth, then I've got to make up my own narrative. I've got to connect the dots. So I think this is where like a lot, but it's definitely transitioned. I've seen the transition. I've seen people go from left to the right, and it is worrying. But this is the fact. We live in a society where you're always going to have left and right. I mean, you're never going to have a uniformly left society or a uniformly right society. Even when the Nazis took over Germany, didn't stop like 20% of the electorate were communists. Did they stop being Marxists? No, they just kept it a bit more quiet, didn't they? So you're always going to have a left and right in society, and I think we've kind of got to learn to coexist with one another rather than just like punch each other in the face. I don't know. That's just like.
Well, I guess also like we don't have anyone arguing for the return to feudal farms and manor estates and lords and knights anymore. We do have a monarchy, but no one's seriously arguing we should go back to that. So maybe society will move to a stage where where we achieve socialism finally, and there's a new kind of divide, maybe a new kind of left and right within that. I don't know, but I think the days are coming where we're going to have to like.
Well, we were there. We were there in England. Like when the Labour Party got in after World War II, Clement Attlee defeated Winston Churchill to everyone's surprise. That was the only true socialist government I think we've ever had in this country.
Aiming towards socialism. I mean, but yeah, they definitely brought in lots of great stuff. But I think you're right. If we'd stayed on that path, we would probably have. Maybe I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of it. But
I've been to Denmark. I don't know if you've ever been there, but I went to Denmark. I went to the capital city, Copenhagen, and they're like everyone just it's like socialist paradise. Everyone's cycling around, and there's no locks on the bikes.
People hover 6 inches above the ground, isn't it?
Exactly.
They float.
The streets are paved with gold. But like I was like, well, no one's locking up their bikes. Why is no one locking up their bikes? Oh well, my friend Alex, or I was visiting out there. No one really steals anything out here. Well, why is that? Oh, because there was no kind of factor that destroyed the unions here. So the unions are really strong, and they just created like this kind of like workers' paradise. And I was like, this is the kind of happy medium, I think, between the right and the left. So it's still like state capitalism, but it's a socialist project, and it's worked really well in Scandinavia. And then like when people tried to do this, the right wing press are so hostile. They're so hostile to that. But it's like, well, just actually have a look at where it works, and it works really well. Why can't we do that here? Is it so hard to imagine?
Yeah, it's just unempirical thinking, isn't it? And I imagine the people who are pushing this right wing capitalist thing, like someone like Margaret Thatcher, for instance. I mean, obviously she's a total bullshitter, but like she might have believed somewhere that eventually there'd be this neoliberal project would complete, and you'd have this amazing free market, and everyone would. Everything would get privatized, and then there'd be this magical hand would come along. I guess that's what they're working for. Yeah, it's impossible.
Nonsense. Like, not everyone can work themselves out of poverty. Not everyone's got the brains and the willpower and the talent. You're going to have a hierarchical society, and that's that. Like, I just don't get this conservative thinking where, like they just think, oh, just work a bit harder. But it's like nonsense. Yeah. You can't. You're saying poor people don't work hard.
Yeah.
Like,
maybe that's why some working class people are on the right. Let's be a bit more. I will be a bit generous here and charitable, even. Like, you're working, you're brutalized by the system. You don't have time. Maybe you don't have time to go on Wikipedia and they see snowflakes like me going blah 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 blah, proletariat unite, blah blah whatever. And maybe I'll hold my hands up. Let's be a bit modest. Like on the left, we're too intellectual, or maybe we're just not able to reach out to ordinary people. Whereas the fascists, language. Your country's under attack, your nation's under attack, blah blah blah. They get really emotive, and then the person's like, "Oh my god, we're under attack, Steve. What are we gonna do?" I know. Let's vote for the privately educated, super rich capitalist guy who's gonna stop immigration.
Because
let's get our independence.
In my interests, he's
exactly.
Like there's no difference between their life in Eton and like your life on a council estate in Bolton. Exactly. Like. Anyway, Joe, what? Half an hour's it's done. It's done.
Part one. I think that's
part one.
I think that's part. I think we need a part two at some point, but that's a good start.
Definitely. Culture wars, mate. I don't know if you got into any conclusions, but I don't know if you have to.
I think maybe a closing statement, Sam. Do you want to make a closing statement? And I'll make one.
I hereby acknowledge Cell's intellect. In all honesty, I don't know. Maybe we need someone a bit more clashy, or someone we need to get someone a bit more on the right, I think, and then because we're both just like bourgeois lefties, and with slight distinctions of left, like you're this left and I'm that left, and etc. Yeah, but it's this was a really interesting discussion. I just think it's a really good thing to kickstart again, to use a.
I'll just say. I have an orange. The orange is neither red nor
Yeah.
yellow. It's orange. It's
Okay.
between this kind of golden capitalism and red. Oh, you got bananas.
I've
So
got
you're an out
banana.
and out capitalist then.
Yeah. Well, and I've got more bananas than you got oranges, so I think I win. Yeah.
You do. But yeah, sounds pretty good. But I think let's call this part one, mate.
Okay. All right. I'm going to stop recording. Wait a
Okay.
minute. Wait a minute. I'm stopping
Bye
recording.
everyone. Thanks for
Bye.
watching.
Bye. If anyone's watching. Right. Okay.